How's it going, everybody? I'm Exotic Gaming, and welcome to one of the biggest Pixel Gun 3D videos of 2021. As you can see, I have created a tier list, and if I scroll down just a bit, you can see I have every single primary weapon in the entirety of Pixel Gun 3D history. This includes weapons that were removed from the game entirely. Weapons like the Bee Swarm spell and Desert Fighter. Who remembers those things? I bet it's been a long time since you heard those words. Anyways, in today's video, I'm going to be ranking every single one of the almost 200 primary weapons that have existed in Pixel Gun 3D, and I hope you guys are going to come along for the ride. Before we do, hey, this is going to be a pretty big video. It's going to take a long time and a lot of effort, so all I ask is for just you guys in return to take a second and hit that like button and subscribe down below. Means a lot. I'm going to be really worn out after this video is done, so please just take a second, hit the like and subscribe, and comment down below two things for me. Comment your #1 favorite primary weapon in this game and your #1 least favorite primary weapon in the game, the worst one in your opinion. I'd love to see if there's any similarities between the Pixel Gun 3D players. Anyways, grab a drink and hey, hope you guys enjoy. This might be a long video, so let's get it started here. To start things off here, we have the Acid Shotgun, and the Acid Shotgun's a bit of a slept-on weapon. I'd say it's a pretty solid gun. It's certainly not S+ tier by any means, and it's probably not even something like an A tier shotgun, but it's still good. It's not one of the worst ones in the entire game, and I'd probably put it right around a middle ground of C tier. And before we get any farther in this video, I want to say C is still good, okay? Let's be very clear about that. It's not like when you're in school and your teacher hands back a test and you get a C and you're like, oh no, I did so bad. Why couldn't I have gotten an A? There's so many good weapons in Pixel Gun 3D that there are very small differences between them. So the difference between C and S is a lot smaller than the difference between C and F. That's a much bigger difference. So anything from C and above is good. Anything from D and below is bad. Very, very bad. But if there is anything that you look at in this video and you're like, huh, I disagree with you, Exotic Gaming, comment down below because I'd love to hear anybody's opinions on if anything they thought was wrong. Let's do this thing, guys. All right, so we got the Adamant Laser Cannon. This is the next weapon here out of the over 200 weapons probably that we're going to have to go through. I would say this weapon is better than the Acid Shotgun, but it's probably not on the same level as some of the best God tier weapons in this game. It was at one time an S+ tier weapon. However, it's sort of fallen off over the years, and I would say B tier is a pretty comfortable position for this thing. Next up, Advanced Scout Rifle. This one's interesting. This is a weapon that we can't get if you're at a high level in this game. You have to recreate and reset back to level 0. And then they're going to give you the option to buy this thing for like $5-10, something like that. So only the beginning players have this thing. And when I tested this thing out at beginning level, it was OP to heck, man. So yes, I'm going to put this thing as an S+ tier, our very first highest rated weapon in this game, because as a beginning player, if you get the Advanced Scout Rifle, you are going to win. It is OP insane. Anyways, continuing on here, we got the Agent Valentine. This is not as good as, maybe something like the Advanced Scout Rifle, but it's still a pretty solid primary gun. And I would say you could win a decent amount of matches that you go into. That's why I'm going to say this is an A tier weapon. We're probably going to have most weapons in Pixel Gun 3D rest around A, B, and C. So that's going to be a common theme throughout this video. Continuing on here, we got the AK-48. This was my favorite weapon for a long time, back in 2014, all the way up to like maybe 2016, 2017. And I would still say it's probably a solid C tier. As you remember, I said C is still good. And this thing still, after like 6-7 years, has retained its own as a pretty solid primary gun. I love it. You love to see it. Let's keep going. AK Mini. Now, this is an interesting one. You're like, how could you even rate this thing? Well, this is a weapon that you would get in deadly games, campaign, survival, stuff like that. And I always remember whenever I would play deadly games, if I got the AK Mini, I was always like, hey, that's a good gun to have. You know, I could probably win. There's not many other weapons in deadly games that are better than the AK Mini, so it's either an S or an A tier in that respect. I'm probably going to put it as A tier because there is one weapon that is so much better for deadly games, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, but yeah, A tier weapon, pretty good. Anyways, we got the Alien Rifle. Now, this is a weapon that maybe some people would disagree with. I do not like this thing at all. It is not good. It's cool. It's got ricocheting, right? But it doesn't look that neat, and it's just not powerful. Whenever I've used it, I've sucked. So I'm going to put it as F tier. It's not quite F minus, but F tier is probably a good rating for this thing. Something that's not F tier is the Aloha Boom Boom. This weapon is kind of slept on as well. I don't really see anybody ever talking about it, but it's actually very good as well. I would say this thing is probably a B tier, solid primary weapon. You're going to get good gameplay with it when you do use it, and I like it. It's pretty cool. Next up, arcade rifle. I love this thing. Who does not? If you don't like the arcade rifle, what's wrong with you? This thing is so freaking cool. It shoots out little lasers in 3 different directions, right? And I get great gameplay with it. So I'm going to put it as S tier just because, dude, this thing is good. You can win a lot of matches, and it's one of the best primary weapons still in Pixel Gun 3D. However, we got the Army Rifle, and the Army Rifle is probably the best weapon to have in all of Deadly Games. Like, if you've ever played Deadly Games before, and you open up the chest and you get the Army Rifle, you're just like, oh, I've won! I've won! You know? I mean, if you win this thing, if you get this thing, you just breathe this huge sigh of relief. And I would say, in relative speaking for Deadly Games and stuff like that, it is an S plus tier because it is the best weapon to get in that minigame. It's freaking awesome. However, let's continue on here. We got the Assault Machine Gun. The Assault Machine Gun back in 2016, 2017 was the very best primary weapon in the entire game. However, it's not quite at S plus tier anymore. Unfortunately, I really wish it was, but I would still say based off of the capacity and the solid damage that it brings and that nice crosshair, it's very easy to get nice long-range gameplay. It's still an S tier. It's really good. And if you can get the Assault Machine Gun, get it and use it and upgrade that thing to level 65. It is freaking awesome. However, let's continue on. We got the Assault Shotgun. Now this thing, I'm going to put in D tier. I've never liked it too much. It's not the best shotgun in the game. Not that great. Nobody uses it. It's sort of a forgotten weapon. Automatic Peacemaker. This is the OG weapon. We all remember this back from 2014, 2015, if we played Pixel Gun 3D back then. And back then, it was an S plus tier. However, it's not that great anymore. I would probably say it's still a solid B tier weapon. It's still good. You can still get a lot of nice gameplay with it if you upgrade this thing to level 65, maybe even mythical, but there are some miniguns that are a bit better than it. Next up, Balloon Cannon. Now, the Balloon Cannon is awesome. I love this thing. It's so cool. It's different, and if you kill somebody with the Balloon Cannon, they feel shame for the next 5 minutes. However, with that being said, it's not that powerful. It's actually kind of difficult to use, and I would put it as D tier because of it. Now we got the Bee Swarm spell. Now this one was interesting. The Bee Swarm spell was released maybe like 2015, 2016, and was in the game for a couple of years before they removed it entirely. Nobody has this weapon anymore. When you shot the Bee Swarm spell, the bullets would find the enemy. Like, you didn't even have to aim. And because of that, it was the most OP thing ever, right? So I'm going to put this thing as S plus tier just because with this weapon, you literally did not have to aim at all. It was the most OP thing ever. Doesn't mean I liked it that much, but it was one of the most OP weapons ever. So that's why it deserves S plus tier. Next up, we got the Best Friends. This is the worst weapon to use in multiplayer in Pixel Gun 3D. It is ridiculously hard to get any gameplay with it, and in all honesty, I've never been a fan of it, you know? You have something like the Automatic Peacemaker, which I actually liked as an OG weapon. I never liked the Best Friend, so I'm going to put this thing as F-. Maybe some people are going to get mad because of it, but that is definitely worthy of a very, very low rating. Anyways, we got the Black Mamba. This is not worthy of a low rating. This is actually one of the better primary weapons in this game. And I would say quite confidently it's an A tier weapon because I think it has that poison damage, is very strong with the amount of bullets, and it's good. It's really good. So Black Mamba, A tier weapon. I like it. Next up, Blinder. This one I do not like as much as the Black Mamba. I believe this weapon shoots out ricocheting shots as well. I'm not 100% sure about that, but you know, when somebody tells me Blinder, I just don't think anything of it. You know, it's kind of one of those forgotten weapons in Pixel Gun 3D. And because of that, I'm going to put it at D tier. It's kind of one of those forgotten, not that great special weapons in this game. It's just a reskin of the Mega Gun. And you know how I didn't like the Mega Gun back in the day. Anyways, we got this thing right here. The block shotgun. Now, this one's interesting. This is one of the better shotguns in this game. And I would say quite confidently it's between B and A. Interestingly enough, we got the Boar's Roar right after this one. And if I were to rate between the two, I still think the Boar's Roar is a bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rate the block shotgun as a B tier weapon and then the Boar's Roar as an A tier weapon. Boar's Roar, very solid. One of the better shotguns in this game. Next up, we got the Brave Patriot. Now, bro, who remembers this thing? Comment the 1 if you remember when everybody used to use this thing back when D-Day came out in 2014. Oh, I love this thing. Unfortunately, it's not that powerful anymore. It's a C tier. It's still good. You know, I'm going to proudly use it in matches when I go into them. But unfortunately, you go up against the Black Mamba with the Brave Patriot. You're not going to win. So, yeah, you know, C tier, still pretty good. I like it. You should use it more often, though. That's all I got to say. We got the Casanova. Casanova is basically the same thing as the Black Mamba. It's a reskin of its. Technically, the Black Mamba is a reskin of the Casanova because the Casanova came out first. But since the Black Mamba is a bit better, I'm going to have to say the Casanova is a B tier weapon just because, obviously, it's not quite at the same level of the Black Mamba. Next up. Champion Peacemaker. This is everything that the automatic Peacemaker wanted to be, except slightly better when it came out, right? Everybody used this thing now instead of the automatic Peacemaker, and because of that, it's a bit better, and it's going to be an A-tier minigun. It's good. I really like it. Now, something that I like even more is the Cheater Hunter. This thing is one of the best primary weapons in this game, and in all honesty, I'm going to say it's almost S+ tier. It's almost S+ tier. However, there are a lot of primary weapons that are very similar to it that if I put this one in S+, I'm going to put a lot in S+, and I want to kind of keep this rating as a very special rating. So I'm going to put the Cheater Hunter as an S tier just because it's one of the best primaries in this game. You use this thing, you're going to win no problem, but it's still slightly less good compared to something like the Advanced Scout Rifle or, you know, the Chickaboom, which we're actually going to take a look at right now. I would say this is one of the best primary shotguns in this game, and it is definitely deserving of S+ tier. Next up, we got the Checkmate, I believe it's called. This is another shotgun, but it's a dual-wielded little mini pistol shotgun thing, and it's not on the same level as the Chickaboom, but it's still a very formidable gun. I would say it's a B tier, solid, gets the job done, and it's good. That's all I got to say there. Now we have the Christmas Spirits. Christmas Spirit's interesting just because I never see anybody using it. I don't know if it's just because it's rare or if it's because it's underpowered, but every time I've ever used it, I've never been that impressed with it, you know? It's borderline C or D, but I just can't bring to put this thing at the same level of the Acid Shotgun. I like the Acid Shotgun more than the Christmas Spirit, so I'm going to put the Christmas Spirit as a D tier weapon, and that's all we're going to say there. Next up, we got this thing. This is called the Combat Candy, I believe it's called. I haven't really ever used this thing, so in all honesty, I don't have much permission to be able to talk about this. So, in all honesty, I think based off of the videos that I've seen in the past, it's borderline A-B. I'm going to just say it's probably B, though I might be wrong. You can comment down below if you disagree with me. But yeah, I'd probably say B is a good rating for this thing. We got this thing, the Combat Rifle. This is very similar to the AK-48 and the Brave Patriot. Pretty much the same amount of time it takes to kill somebody, so C tier is a good rating. Cookie Minigun is one of the better miniguns in this game, and it's right on par with something like the Champion Peacemaker. So, hey, A tier for the Cookie Minigun. It's a pretty cool gun. Next up, we got the Cooler. And the Cooler's average, you know? It's not spectacular. It's very average. And I'd probably rate the Cooler as a C tier weapon, you know? It's going to be very similar to the AK-48s and the Combat Rifle. Nothing too spectacular there. However, something that I absolutely love is the Crystal Laser Cannon. You guys remember I always used to use this thing back in the day. I loved it. It was awesome. However, it's basically the same as the Adamant Laser Cannon. There's really not much difference, so I'm going to have to put it as a B tier weapon as well. It's basically the same thing. We got the Cyber Machine Gun, which I have never used before, believe it or not. I had to watch somebody's YouTube video on it, so shout out to whoever it was that I actually clicked on their video and watched, but I don't really know much about this thing. Based off of the video, I heard the person saying it's average, pretty good. And I think they said it was like around a B tier. So we're going to put the Cyber Machine Gun as a B tier weapon and hope not too many 8-year-olds get mad with this video. Next up, we got the Cyborg Hands. Cyborg Hands is a solid S tier weapon. One of the best in the game. It probably was the very best when it first came out. However, it's dropped a place because there are a couple that are still better than it. But it's an S tier weapon because it's really, really good. Next up, the Deadly Tail is also an S tier weapon. This was one of those special weapons you got after the Battle Pass. I think it was the anime season. Not 100% sure about that, but I got this one about a month ago, and I've loved it ever since. Probably one of my most used primary weapons in this entire game. It is really, really cool. We got the Debts Collector. I don't know much about this thing as well. I never got this thing, and I would say it's probably pretty similar to the Boar's Roar. So I would say an A tier is probably a good rating for that thing. Also, another weapon that I don't really know too much about is this, which is called the Demonic Crusher. It sounds powerful, and based off of the video that I saw from somebody, it looked pretty powerful. So I think A tier is the way to go. I might be wrong. Might be more like B tier, or it might be S plus tier. But hey, that's where you guys come in. Comment down below your opinions on the Demonic Crusher. Next up, we got the Desert Fighter. Let's take a second to look at this thing. This weapon, only like maybe 100, 200 people have in the entire game. I am not one of them. I never got the Desert Fighter because this is a weapon that only released for about 5 minutes back like 2 years ago. And only the people that were online during those 5 minutes were able to get this thing. A lot of people say that this is a weapon that you were able to get if you're a hacker, and this is a way that they can tell who is a hacker or not, but that's a lie. That's not actually true. It's just you have to be lucky to get this thing, and it's still a very, very good gun. I would say probably an S tier. Not quite S plus tier. You know, it's debatable. Some people might say it's S plus just because it's so rare. But based off of stats, it's probably between an A and an S tier, and I'm just going to give it S tier just because it's cool and it's rare and very few people have it. Next up, Devastator. Devastator has not been able to retain its power over the years. I remember when this thing came out, it was probably S tier, one of the best shotguns in the game. Unfortunately, it's fallen down to probably C tier. However, one weapon that's really dropped off a lot is the Dino Slayer. When this thing came out, it was pretty average. I would say it was probably about a C tier. However, the Dino Slayer is one of the worst weapons in this entire game. And I would say it is on par with the alien rifle, or maybe even the best friend. It's debatable. If I could put something in between, I'd probably do that, but let's just go put it as F because I can't rate this thing as bad as the best friend. It's still better than the best friends. The Disc Battle Station is another weapon that I don't know too much about, but from everybody that I've ever seen using this thing, they've always done pretty well, and I would say B tier is probably pretty good. One weapon that is very good is this thing, the Disguised Rifle, and I'm debating whether or not I should put this thing as S or S plus. So many people used this thing back in the day when it first came out, about 2-3 months ago, I think, and I think this might actually be an S plus tier because it's probably one of the very best rifles in this entire game. It's really, really good. Now we got the Double Barrel Shotgun. The Double Barrel Shotgun is interesting because I was always very happy when I got this thing if I played deadly games or survival or campaign or stuff like that. It was good. Got the job done. However, it's probably not on the same level as something like the AK Mini. I'd probably put it as a B tier weapon, and we're going to call it a day. Next up, we got the dual shotguns. I would say it's not as special as the double-barreled shotgun. It's actually kind of fallen off quite a bit. It's a D tier just because it's not that powerful anymore. Next up, we got the dual Uzi. I would say the dual Uzi is probably a C tier. It's very similar, comparable to something like the AK-48 Brave Patriot combat rifle. It's not as bad as the dual shotguns, but it's kind of hard to get good gameplay with this thing in 2021. I'm kind of sad that this thing has gone downhill that much. Something that's not gone downhill, though, is the Echo Dial rifle. This is a very solid gun, very good primary, just as good as a lot of these other ones like the Black Mamba and the Agent Valentine. I love using it. It's cool. It's got a little crocodile on it, and A tier is a good rating for it. Egg Colorants is almost an S tier. You know what? I'm going to put it as S plus tier. It's just awesome. Every single time I've ever used the Egg Colorant, I've gotten amazing gameplay with it. And I don't know if it's just because I'm lucky, but This thing is good, really good, and if this thing comes back in the future, get it, because it's really, really good. Another thing that you guys should get is the Eindringling. Unfortunately, it's not as good as the the egg colorant, but it's still pretty good. I'd say C tier because it's right on line with something like the Brave Patriot or the AK-48s or the combat rifle. So, yeah, C tier for the Eindringling. Eliminator Z2, however, I've always gotten great gameplay with, and I'm going to put this thing as an S tier because it still is one of the best primary weapons. It's got all of the right special abilities to make it a very formidable gun, and it looks cool as well, which is an added bonus. We got this thing, the Elven Killer Rifle. I don't know much about this thing. However, everybody that I've seen says it's very comparable to something like the Combat Candy, so I'm going to put it as B tier and call it a day. We got the Enchanting Altar, which is actually a bit of a slept-on gun. Like, if you've never considered using this thing, you might. Because I used it about a month ago, and I was shocked. It's probably an S-tier weapon because it's really, really good. I like that thing a lot. Now we got the Energy Assault Rifle, and I don't really have much to say about it. I'd say C tier. Very average gun. Nothing too special about it. Same with the Evil Snowman. C tier. Not too much to say about it. It's cool. It's neat. It's an evil snowman, which I guess is a cool theme, but it's just another C-tier weapon. Excalibur is not C-tier, though, and this is everything that the Champion Peacemaker wanted to be. This is an S-tier minigun, one of the best miniguns in this entire game. It's debatable that it could be S+, but unfortunately, I just have to say weapons like the Disguised Rifle and the Chickaboom are still a bit better. Just because, you know, the only reason why the Excalibur is at S tier is because it takes a second once you press the firing button to actually start shooting. If it didn't have that delay, then it would be S+. But since it does have that delay, it is a regular S tier weapon here. We got the Exquisite Bagpipes, and I believe this is a pretty powerful weapon as well. I haven't used it too much, but I think A tier is a pretty good rating for that thing. Next up, the Firefighter. I love this thing, and it's one of my favorite primaries in this entire game. S-tier weapon. It burns enemies, which is a huge bonus. Sounds awesome as well, and it's got a cool reload. It's got all the right things going for it, so yes, that is going to be an S-tier weapon. Frank Chipon. I still don't know if I'm saying his name right. He's cool. He's a little guy you hold in your hand with a Tommy gun, and he's actually really powerful, right? He's an A-tier weapon still after all of these years, and I love him. You got to use him more often because he's really powerful. Next up, we got the Future Police Rifle. Future Police Rifle is pretty average, I'd have to say. It's a C-tier weapon, very similar to something like the AK-48s or the combat rifle. Nothing too special about it. And I would say the Future Rifle is actually a bit lower than the Future Police Rifle. It's probably a D-tier weapon just because it's really not that special, and I never really liked it too much. Next up, we got the Gift Stitcher, and I don't really like this thing. Every time I've ever used it, I've never gotten good gameplay. Maybe some of you guys do get good gameplay, but I think it's an F tier. It's weird. It doesn't even look that neat. It's just an odd weapon, man. I don't like it. One thing that I absolutely love, actually 3 weapons in a row that I absolutely love. Glitched Machine Gun, automatic S+. It probably could be above S+. If I could put a rating above S+, I would. It's got infinite ammo. That is automatically S+ category, okay? It's freaking insane. And then we got the Golden Bros, which is just flat out one of the most powerful primaries in this entire game. I absolutely love them. They're so cool. They are like every bit better than the dual Uzi in every single way. They're insane, absolutely insane. And then we got the Golden Friend. S tier. It's not quite S+ anymore because we can't put it on the same level of something like the Glitched Machine Gun and the Egg Colorant and the Disguised Rifle, but this weapon is freaking awesome. I remember I spent probably like $200-300 over the years trying to get this thing, and it's still probably my favorite primary weapon ever in this game. Next up, the Goose Substance Rifle. Everybody I've heard from says this is a very, very powerful weapon, and it's probably an A tier, debatably S tier. I don't know. I haven't used it too much, so I don't want to put it too high. I think A tier is probably a good rating, and I need to get a drink. We're like 25 minutes into this video, and we still got a long ways to go. Gum Rifle. Not too much to say about it. Never was a fan. Very similar to the Balloon Cannon. It's a D tier weapon. Actually, no. Let's go put it as C tier just because it's a bit better than the balloon cannon. Gunforce PGX. Now, this one's a bit controversial. A lot of people I've heard from say that this is actually pretty good. Whenever I've tested it out, I've never been a fan. And I'm going to put this as a C tier weapon just because I was very disappointed when this thing came out. It's not on the same level of something like, the Cheater Hunter or the Disguised Rifle. Next up, we got the Hand Gatling. Hand Gatling is easily just as good as the Champion Peacemaker. I love it. Really, really powerful, really fun weapon to use, and I personally like it even more than the Champion and the Automatic Peacemaker. Hand Minigun. Hand Minigun is very similar to the Hand Gatling, and it's still a very, very powerful weapon. A lot of fun. Definitely try it out if you haven't already. It's really, really cool. One weapon that I do not know anything about is this thing right here, the Harbinger of Ragnarok. I'm pretty sure it's powerful, so I'm debating whether or not to put this as an S tier weapon. However, I'm going to hold on just because I don't know too much about it and I don't want to put it at too high of a rating. We're going to have to actually decrease the size of this tier list just because it's getting too big. And let's continue on. Right now we have the Hand Corn. I remember I really liked the Hand Corn, and I actually would say this is one of the better primary weapons in this game. I was very impressed when it came out and I used it, so I think A tier is a good rating for this thing. This one right here, the Healing Carp, is another slept-on weapon. This is an A tier weapon, debatably S tier. It's really good, and I don't know. If you haven't used it before, try it out. Something that I don't actually like as much is the Heavy Drill Rifle. I would say this thing is a B tier just because it's still pretty decent, but I was a bit disappointed when it came out. It was a bit underwhelming, so yeah. B tier is a pretty good rating for it. We got the Heavy Shotgun. Everybody loved the Heavy Shotgun back in 2014. However, it's not very good anymore. I'm debating whether or not to put it as C or D. I think I'm going to put it as C just because it's still, got some good gameplay in certain scenarios, but its counterpart, the Rhino, might be going into D tier. Hellraiser. This weapon came out in 2014, and guess what? It is still an S tier weapon. Very solid, formidable gun. You're going to get great gameplay with it. I absolutely love it. Hellraiser is a very, very good gun. Now we have the Hero, which is not a very good gun. I really don't understand why, but I would say this is probably a D tier. A lot of people might disagree with me on that, but it's a very underwhelming gun, and it takes a long time to kill somebody with that thing. Next up, we got this thing, the Holy Shotgun. Another one of those weapons that I was kind of underwhelmed when using. I'd say C tier, which is not bad, but it's, you really think with something that looks that cool, it might be at like an A tier or an S tier, but it's not. Now we got this thing, the Ice Chaser. This is very good. This is a solid A tier weapon, debatably S tier. I'm going to put S tier. It's actually really good, one of the better and more fun weapons to use in this game. If you don't have the Ice Chaser, try to get it because it's really, really cool. Ice King's Fury was probably S plus tier back in the day. However, it's fallen down. And I would say it's an A tier. Still good weapon to use. Still just as good as something like the Healing Carp or the Black Mamba. It's fun. I really like it. Icicle Minigun, though, has fallen downhill. It's still fun. I love it, but I'm going to have to say it's a C tier weapon. But it's not at least as bad as the Impulse Minigun, which I'm going to say is a D tier. The Impulse Minigun is not a very good weapon, and don't waste your coins or gems or whatever it costs on it. Next up, we got the Impulse Rifle. This is actually good, and it's slept on, and I've used it recently and gotten very good gameplay with it. I'm going to say it's a B tier, something that you guys might have disagreed with, but it's actually good. If you have it, upgrade it and try it out because it's actually really, really fun. Now I got the Industrial Nailer. I've never been a fan of this thing. It's very similar to the Cooler in that I don't really like it that much, Maybe some of you guys really like this thing a lot, and you would put this thing all the way up to like S tier, but I'm going to say it's a C tier weapon based off of my personal opinion. I just don't like it. Now we got the Invader. It's another one of those weapons that's kind of forgotten about. Nothing super crazy to write home about. C tier, just like the Eindringling or the Combat Rifle. Pretty average gun. Now we got the what is this guy's called? I have a list on an iPad right now in case you guys didn't know, so I remembered the names of everything. This guy is called the Johnny P. And the Johnny P is awesome, okay? All right, I would say it's debatable. It might be S plus tier. And you know what? I'm going to put it as S plus tier. Every time I have ever used the Johnny P, he's been awesome, so OP, all right? He literally has P as his last name, so, you know, that guy is good. One of the best primaries in this entire game. Lancelot's. This is an S tier. Might be S plus tier. But I'd have to say, if I were to rank this thing compared to the Golden Bros, I like the Golden Bros more. It seems more powerful. However, Lancelot is still really, really good. We have another S plus tier, though, and it's this thing, the large caliber machine gun. This thing was released very recently, and it is insanely OP, so powerful. It's awesome. I love that thing. But, hey, let's just keep going. Laser Assistant, S tier, burns enemies, still very powerful after all of these years. If you have the Laser Assistant and you haven't used it in a while, try it out because you will be shocked how good that weapon still is. Next up, Last Kiss. This is probably an F weapon. I do not like the Last Kiss at all. Unfortunately, it really sucks because it's kind of neat. It's a Valentine's weapon. It's super OG. It's been in the game for like 6 years now, but it's really not that great. That's all I got to say there. However, one weapon that is really good is the Last Squeak. And this is an S tier weapon, one of the best shotguns in the entire game. Not quite on the same level as the Chickaboom. That's why I have the Chickaboom as an S plus tier. But, hey, S tier is still really, really good. We have the Like Booster. And considering I'm a YouTuber, you would think I would use this thing more often. But I don't really know much about this. And I don't know if it's like that fantastic. But I'm pretty sure it's still pretty decent. So I think A tier is a good rating for it. By the way, if you're watching this video right now and you haven't yet left a like, be sure to do so. The Like Booster told you to. Anyways, let's keep going because we have a lot more to go over. The Liquid Fire. Never really thought too much about this thing. It's a C tier, you know, pretty average, nothing to write home about. But one thing that I'm going to rate as at least A tier is the Lucky Strike. You might have forgotten about this thing because this weapon was released only for Android players back as a reskin of the Last Kiss. You see a similarity between the two? Yeah, it's the same gun. Some players got the Last Kiss. Some players got the Lucky Strike. And the Lucky Strike is no longer obtainable in this game. But I would say back in the day when it first came out and people used it, it was easily an A tier. Yes, A tier weapon, Lucky Strike, really cool. Next up, we got this thing right here. This is the good old Magic Musket. And I don't really know much about it. I've never used it before. So I would say it's probably an A tier, but maybe I'm wrong. You guys can let me know down below in the comments. One thing that I do know is A tier is the Marksman Rifle. This is actually really good. And, you know, the AK-48s and the Combat Rifle have gone down to C tier. The Marksman has still held its own as an A tier. Still really good. I like that thing a lot. One weapon that I never really liked, though, was the Mech Heavy Rifle. It was not really that great to me, in my opinion, so I'd say it's a D tier, very similar to the Hero. It's almost the same type of gun, in all honesty. One weapon that I really wish I could rank higher was the Mega Destroyer. However, this weapon was re-released, and more people have it now, so it's kind of lost that special fame that it has as like a removed secret gun. You know, I'm going to have to say it's D tier. A lot of people are going to disagree, and they're going to say, no, how could you say that? You always talk about the Mega Destroyer, but like, I can't get good gameplay with it no matter how hard I try. And I'm not going to put it as F because I can't bring myself to put one of my favorite weapons in this game as F, but based off of performance, I'm going to have to say D tier. It's just not that great. Next up, Mega Gun. It's just the Mega Gun. There's nothing that special about it. It's a C tier. It used to be much more powerful back in the day, but it's really fallen downhill, and it's still a C tier weapon, so pretty average. One weapon that is much better is the Minigun Cyber Module, and I would say this is probably still an A tier weapon. Very good, very powerful, gets the job done, and I like it. One weapon that I really thought would be more powerful than what it is the Impulse Minigun, or the Minigun Shotgun, sorry. It's not that great. You know, a lot of people think, oh, it sounds really powerful. It's a minigun and a shotgun, but it's a C tier. Just nothing that special about it. Next up, we got the Mithril Rifle. This is another C tier weapon. every time I've ever used it, I've never been able to do well with it. I've never gotten great gameplay, and it's just, that's all I got to say there. Next up, we got this thing, the Mobile Outpost. This is an A-tier weapon. Very powerful. I remember when I reviewed it, I got great gameplay, and it still is a very solid gun. So Mobile Outpost, very, very good. We have another S+ weapon, the Neutron Pulsator. This is arguably the very best primary weapon in this game. So if at the end of this video, I were to make another section above S+, I would move this one to S+, alongside the Golden Bros and the Glitched Machine Gun. Like, those three weapons would probably go up to S+, because they are absolutely insane. Next up, the Night Hunter. This one is completely slept on. I love this thing, and I'm going to put it as an S-tier weapon. It is so good, and no one ever uses it. I don't know why. It's so cool, looks awesome, it's got a cool name, and it's very powerful. So if you have the Night Hunter, use it, because it's really, really cool. One thing that I would say maybe not used too much is the Nuclear Rifle. I'm going to say this is a C tier. It got a reskin recently, but I've never been a fan of it. It's hard to use. You don't get the best gameplay in the world, and C tier seems like a pretty good rating for it. Next up, the Oh Deer. A tier. It's not that bad. It's pretty good. Gets the job done. I just don't really use it too much, but every time I have used it, I've gotten pretty good gameplay. So A tier for the Oh Deer. Oppressor of Lives. I love this thing so much. I'm going to give it S tier. Very neat weapon. It's very formidable. A lot of people think this weapon isn't as good as it should be, but I would say S tier. If you have it, use it, because you're going to really, really enjoy it. Next up, Orange Killer. I've never used this thing before, and I believe, is this a reskin? No, it's not. You know, I don't really know anything about this thing, so I'm going to put it as B tier, just because that's a pretty average rating for these weapons here, but I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions on the Orange Killer, just because I don't really know anything about it. Next up, here's a weapon that you might have never seen before. You see it in my hand right there. This is the paintball rifle, and it's not the paintball rifle from the sniper section. It's actually the paintball rifle from Block Crash, back when Block Crash first was released. Now, I remember I used it a couple of times, and I never really thought too much of it. I'm going to put it as a B-tier weapon, because you couldn't actually use it in multiplayer. But hey, it was a pretty cool weapon back in the day, and no one has it anymore. Next up, right here, we got the Patrol Officer 747. This is an S tier. It's not quite on the same level of the Glitched Machine Gun, but it is one of the best primary weapons right now in Pixel Gun 3D. So yes, this is an S tier weapon. One weapon that is another F- is the Pencil Thrower. You see it right there. We finally have another F-. I hate that thing with a passion. It is so hard to use, and it sucks. Don't use the Pencil Thrower. This is really not good at all. And another weapon that's not that great is the Penalizer. This thing right here, it's just a reskin of all the other vectors in this game, and I've never been a fan. Never liked that thing at all. It really isn't that great. And we got the Pew Pew Rifle. I've never been a fan of this thing as well, so I'm going to put it as a C tier. It's better than the Penalizer, but not by much. So C tier weapon, pretty average. Let's keep it going. This thing here, the PGA-01 Living Rifle, is arguably one of the best in this entire game. I'm debating whether or not to put it as an S+ tier, but again, I can't really do that just because that's reserved for very special weapons. So I'm going to put it as an S tier, and it's almost S+. Just like the Cheater Hunter, I'm sort of debating whether or not I should put them up into S+. Photon Shotgun. Never liked this thing. Not a great weapon. D tier. And this literally is getting too big. The list. Oh my god. It's getting so big, dude. Like, what the heck am I going to do? There's still so many weapons left. Oh, no. All right, well, we got to keep trucking along here. Next up, we got this thing, the Plasma Minigun. It sucks. I hate it. It's an F tier. Don't use this thing. Worst minigun in all of Pixel Gun 3D. It really, really sucks. Plasma Rifle. I wish this thing was better than it is, but it's arguably one of the very worst in this entire game. So it's going to be another F tier weapon. Actually, I'm going to say F-. F- for the Plasma Rifle. I'm sorry, but it is going to be an F-. Plasmatic Digger. I think is an S tier. Haven't used it before, but everybody that I've talked to has said that it's very, very good, and it's one of the best in this game. So, A, S tier, very solid gun. Another weapon that I'm debating putting into S tier, but I think I'm going to keep in A tier, is this, the plastic rifle. Very solid gun, gives you great gameplay. I've always loved using it, and it's cool. It's a little toy soldier's gun. So, yeah, if you have the plastic rifle, or maybe you have it in the shop and you're considering whether or not you should buy it, you might want to, because it's actually really, really good. Poison spell, not so much. This is a D tier weapon. I've never liked it. It's one of those spells that's sort of forgotten, whereas the Bee Swarm spell had a lot of special things to it. All this thing did was poison enemies, and you had other weapons that already did that did it better than it. So it's a D tier, you know? That's all I got to say there. A weapon that is another slept-on one is the Poisonous Vine. This one is almost S tier, though I can't quite put it on the same level as something like the Patrol Officer and the Firefighter. So I'm going to put it as an A tier weapon, though you should know if it does come out in a future Halloween update, you should get it because it's really, really good. We got the Portalius Wrath. I'd say this is another A tier. Very good, solid, gets the job done. One weapon that I actually would say is an S tier is this thing right here, the Potato Implant. You know what? I'm actually going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say this is an S+ tier weapon. It's unique. It shoots out potatoes, and it's like a 2 or a 3 shot kill with a very fast firing rate. It's very, very good. I love this thing to death. It's really cool. And we got to make the list even smaller. Look at this. Oh my God, it's hard to see all the guns now. This is ridiculous. But we got the Predator. And unfortunately, this is a D tier now. It's not that great. I don't like the Predator anymore. I used to love this thing, but it sort of sucks now. One weapon that does not suck is this here, the Prehistoric Shotgun. It's a B tier weapon, and it's still quite good. If you use it, you're going to get good gameplay because it's a very formidable shotgun. Another weapon that I would say is A tier is this, the Project Dolphin. It's not quite on the same level as the Project Marlin when that weapon came out in the sniper section, which I would say that one is at least S tier. However, for a assault rifle, it's still very powerful, and A tier is a very, very good rating. Psionic Spore Thrower. This is an S tier. One of the coolest looking weapons in this game, and, you know, there's not really much else to say about it. It's just very powerful, and I've always been very happy whenever I've gotten this thing in Battle Royale. We got the Pyro 1116, and, you know, it's one of those weapons that I really wish could be higher, but it's just not. I've tried to use this thing a lot, and I've never really gotten the best gameplay in the world. I'm going to put this thing as a C tier, just because the Firefighter does everything that the Pyro 1116 has, but it's just so much better. So, yeah, that's that. We got the Rainbow Dispenser. I've never used this thing before, so in all honesty, I'm going to have to put this thing as an A tier, just because I don't know much else about it. A tier I still think is really, really good. Ranger Rifle. It's another one of those weapons just like the AK-48s and the combat rifle that has still retained its own to a certain extent, but it's not that special anymore. It's a very average, solid assault rifle, not quite at the same level of something like the Casanova or the Marksman. Continuing on here, we got the Rapid Fire Rifle, and it's basically the same thing as the Future Police Rifle. Not really much difference between the two weapons. C tier, another solid weapon to have in this game. And now we have the Rhino. You guys remember when I gave the Rhino C tier? Well, or the Heavy Shotgun, I should say, C tier. Well, this thing I don't like as much as the Heavy Shotgun. It's a very forgotten weapon, and I'm going to say this is a D tier. You see a common theme. There's a lot of shotguns that have gotten into this rating here, and there's probably more to follow. Next up, we got this thing right here. This is new. This is the newest weapon on this list. This is the Ritual Rifle, and a lot of people might disagree with me, but I'm going to say this is an A-tier weapon. It's very good, but it's not the best. It's solid, and it's worth the money to get just because it has ricocheting, and it's cool, but I'm going to say A-tier, just because there are some that are still better than it. Royal Fighter. Royal Fighter's probably B tier. Not much else to say there. And then we got this thing, the Rude Bully. I've never used this thing before, so I don't really have much to say about it. I would say A tier because it's kind of new and it's still pretty good. So yeah, Rude Bully seems like an A tier weapon. Something that is not A tier at all is the Saturn. Saturn is probably D tier. I've never liked this thing either. Just like the Gift Stitcher, it sort of sucks. Some people might like it a lot, but I've just never been a fan. So yeah, that's the Saturn for us. We got the Secret Forces rifle. Secret Forces rifle is a little bit below the Hellraiser, in my personal opinion. Some people might say it's just the same or maybe even better, but I really would say it's hard to be better than S tier for something like the Secret Forces rifle. So we have, yet again, another A tier weapon here. Next up, the semi-auto shotgun. I really wish this weapon was higher than it is, but every time I've used it, I've gotten okay gameplay. So I'm going to say this weapon is a B tier, and I'd say that's pretty good. Another weapon that I wish was higher than it is the Serious Argument. This is debatably C or D tier. Now, I'm from the United States. I love a gun that's skinned like the USA, but unfortunately, with a weapon that's just not that powerful, I'm going to have to say it's D tier. It's very similar to the Hero. It's kind of hard to use. Next up, we got the Sharp-Eyed Courier. Sharp-Eyed Courier, very solid gun. It's going to be an A tier weapon, and I'm pretty confident about that rating here. We got this thing, the Shell Bubbler. This is going to be an S plus tier. The reason is because this weapon actually enlarges people's heads, and that's a very unique stat to it. Makes it very easy to get headshots, and because of that massive ability, I think that thing is deserving of S plus tier. We got the Simple Shotgun. Unfortunately, I do not like this thing at all. I've never liked it, so it's an F minus tier. And what is this thing here? This is called, I don't even know. What is that thing? It's the Sleipnir? Sleipnir? I've never used this thing before. What is that? I've never seen it before in my entire life. B tier? What do you guys think? Please let me know. Another B tier is the Social Uzi. I made an entire video on this thing. You could have only gotten this thing back in like 2015. And you can't get this weapon anymore. Unfortunately, it's not that great. You know, I was able to get pretty decent gameplay when I made that video, but I really wanted to try my best to get good gameplay, and it took a long time before I got that. So, yeah, B tier for the Social Uzi. Let's keep it going here. Next up, we got the Space Devastator. I've never been a fan of this thing as well. I think D tier probably is a good rating for this thing. Not that great. It's very similar to something like the Christmas Spirit, if you guys remember that weapon here. Next up, the Spinny Shooty. I have never used this thing before. Again, so I don't really know if I should give it maybe B tier or A tier, but I'm going to give it B tier just because I don't want to give it a rating too high to what it actually is. Something that I do not like is the Stake Gun. I'm going to say that the Stake Gun is basically the same thing as the Icicle Minigun. You guys see the Icicle Minigun right there in C tier. It's just the same thing, you know? There's not really much differences. Actually, I'm going to give it a D tier just because the Icicle Minigun actually slows down enemies, which is a good ability to have. This thing really doesn't do that. It's just not really that great anymore, and it kind of sucks. Next up, State Defender. This is a solid A tier weapon. It's held its own. Very good. I love the scope on this thing, and it's just an all-around very, very good gun. One weapon that has not really retained its own is the Steam Gun. It's not too old, but it's only about a C tier. You know, very average gun. Steam Power here. As you can see, my voice is getting kind of getting rough. And we're almost 50 minutes in. Luckily, we're going to probably finish in about 10 minutes or so. Steam Power is another shotgun that I can't really remember too much about. It used to be awesome back in the day, but nowadays it's just kind of not that great. So it's almost D tier. And in fact, I might actually put the Steam Power as a D tier weapon. We have the Stormtrooper Exoskeleton. And the Stormtrooper Exoskeleton is one of the best exoskeletons in this entire game. I'm actually going to give it an S tier just because it's really, really good. We got the Storm. The Storm is insane. The Storm is an S plus tier, and it's one of the very best primary weapons in this entire game. This is basically the Firefighter, but on steroids, and I'm very confident in saying that there are very few weapons in this game that are better than the Storm. So yeah, Storm is a very, very good gun. Something that's not as good is the Sub-Zero. I don't remember too much about the Sub-Zero. I'd say it's very comparable to the Blighter. So I'm going to say that this is a D tier weapon, and we're going to just call it a day. Next up, we got the SWAT rifle. Again, this is another C tier weapon, just like the Eindringling, the Brave Patriot, AK-48, combat rifle, one of those old school weapons that's just, pretty average right now in 2021. Next up, we got this here, the System Admin. Much better. I would say this is an A tier weapon, and it's still quite formidable. Gives you good gameplay. I like it a lot. Tactical rifle. Tactical rifle is very similar to the Ranger rifle. So where did I put the Ranger rifle? I put the Ranger rifle as a C tier. So it's basically the same thing. I'm going to give it another C tier. So yeah, we're going to just do that and call it a day. Next up, we got the transformed machine gun. This is actually really cool. I'm going to say this is an A tier. It's not quite on the same level as the arcade rifle, which shoots out bullets in 3 different directions. This one does the same thing, but it's still very good, and I like using this thing from time to time. Next up, we got the Treasurer. I've never gotten this thing before, never used it before, but everybody I've ever heard says it's a very, very good gun, and I'm debating whether or not to put it as S tier or A tier. I think I'm going to put it as an S tier weapon, not quite S+, but S tier, and I think that's probably a pretty good rating. We now have an S+ tier weapon, though. Ultimatum. This is the Ultimatum. Debatably the very best weapon in this entire game. If I could rank 2 weapons as the 2 very best in this entire game, I'd probably say the Ultimatum and the Neutron Pulsator. Those 2 things. If you want a shotgun, best one in the game is the Ultimatum. If you want a super fast firing assault rifle, Neutron Pulsator is the best one in this game. Next up, we got the Undertaker, which unfortunately is not as good as the Ultimatum. It's a pretty average shotgun. I'd say it's probably a C tier. It's not as bad as some of these other ones, but it's not really something that you think about. So C tier is the way to go. We got the Uzi. This thing is a really old school gun, and I do think this weapon actually is at least a B tier. Just because whenever I go into deadly games and I get that thing, I'm pretty confident with myself. I still think the AK Mini is a bit better than the Uzi, but this one's probably pretty comparable to the double-barreled shotgun, and I like it a lot. So, if you ever play deadly games in the future and you get that thing, you'll be pretty good with it. This weapon here, the Vandals, is very, very interesting. I'm almost tempted to put this as an S+ tier weapon. I'm not going to, because I still think something like the Ultimatum and the, something like that thingy right there is a bit better. But this weapon used to be probably like C or D tier, was not very good. But they gave a reskin, and when I upgraded this thing to Mythical, it was really, really good. So S tier weapon for the Vandals, they're good. They are really, really good. Next up, we got the Veteran here. The Veteran is a weapon that I really wish was better than it is, but unfortunately, it is not. It's actually pretty difficult to get good gameplay with it, and I think it's going to be a D tier weapon, just like the Hero and the Mech Heavy Rifle. It's cool, one of my favorite weapons in this game, but unfortunately, it's just not very good. Now, we're getting close to the final 8 here, and one of them is the Viking. I would say, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. I do not want to put it as a C tier weapon, but I would say the Viking is probably an S tier. I remember back in the day when everybody was debating whether or not the Viking or the Ultimatum was the best shotgun in this game. I personally think the Ultimatum is better than the Viking, but the Viking is still really, really good. So it's going to be an S tier, and it's probably out of the different shotguns that we're seeing right here, 1, 2, it's probably the 3rd best shotgun in all of Pixel Gun 3D. So that's still really, really good. Next up, we got this thing right here, the War Master. Honest to God, I do not remember this thing at all. I have it in my inventory. I don't even know the last time I used this thing. So I'm going to say this is an F tier just because who the heck even uses this thing anymore? It's a forgotten weapon that is just not that great. At least the Mech Heavy Rifle is something that we still remember from back in the day. It's just a reskinned version of the Mech Heavy Rifle, and I've never really been a fan. Next up, we got the Water Rifle. This is a C tier. It's not the best in the entire world. It's certainly not the worst, but it's one of those weapons that used to be much better than it is right now. Next up, we got the Water Rifle. Not the Water Rifle. This is called, what is it called? Hold on, I have my list right here. It's called the Watermen's Rifle, and I think this weapon is pretty good. In if I remember correctly, it was at least a B, maybe an A tier. And I think I'm going to give it an A tier just because why not? You know, let's just do something a little bit daring and put that thing as an A tier weapon. Next up, we got the Witch Hunter. Witch Hunter is one of those weapons that no one really remembers. It's like the Undertaker, except slightly worse. And I think I'm going to put it as a D tier weapon just because who the heck even remembers that thing? I don't know, dude. Wrath of Fire. Wrath of Fire is another one of those weapons that I really wish was better than it is. I'm going to put it as B tier, which is still good, but it's not as good as something like the Firefighter, which is a S tier weapon. It does a lot of the same stuff, but the Firefighter is still better. And then we're finally getting to the last two. We got the Xmas Destroyer, which is not very good. Unfortunately, this is another F tier weapon. I've never been a fan of it. It's very similar to the Dino Slayer in that it's extremely difficult to use. And then at the very end of it all, we got the Zap Blaster. And I'm going to put this thing as A tier. And there we go. Let's go increase the size so you guys can see everything a bit better. Here we go. This is our official Pixel Gun 3D tier list of every single primary weapon in this entire game. You can see all the S plus tiers, and we're going to go through at least the S plus tiers to see if there's anything that we would change. The Advanced Scout Rifle, the Army Rifle, the Bee Swarm Spell, the Chickaboom, the Disguised Rifle, the Egg Colorant, the Glitched Machine Gun, the Golden Bros, the Johnny P, the Light Caliber Machine Gun, I believe it's called, the Neutron Pulsator, Potato Implant, whatever that is, the Shell Bubbler, the Storm, and the Ultimatum. And I'm actually going to add one row above, right? And that one single row above is going to have a pink tier. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this as S, and then our one above is going to be pink, which is going to be the ultimate S++ tier, right? And there we go. We're going to move a couple of the weapons that I personally think deserve to be even better than S+ tier. And I think the very best ones would be the Ultimatum, the Glitched Machine Gun, the Golden Bros, and I think that's it. No, actually, yes, the Neutron Pulsator. Let's do that. I think that's it. Those are the 4 best primary weapons, in my personal opinion, right now in 2021. Maybe some of you guys disagree with this list, and if you do, that's okay. Create your own tier list and tweet it at me because, hey, guess what? I'm going to put the link to this tier list down below in the description. So if you guys would like to do this yourself and create your own tier list and maybe make it on, post it on Instagram or Twitter, you can tag me, and I'd love to see your guys' ranked primary weapons in Pixel Gun 3D. If this video does well, I will do this for each and every category of this game. I'll do it for backup, melee, special, sniper, and heavy. And hey, I would like everybody who has watched this far to comment down below what they would like to see me do next. I'm thinking heavy, though I might do special. But comment down below which one you'd like to see next. Hope you guys did enjoy. If there's anything you'd like me to improve for the next time I do one of these tier lists, then let me know. But for now, yeah, it's just about an hour. Make sure to leave a like, guys, if you did enjoy. Again, as I said, please do leave a like. It was really hard to talk for an entire hour about this stuff, but I did it for you guys, and I hope you did enjoy. Subscribe down below and comment down below. Just a couple of different things, right? Put this video higher in the algorithm. Comment a few random things. It would really help me out a lot. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you all later.